are ready to start now. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Alejandra Rodriguez, and I work for the Center for Financial Empowerment, which is housed inside the Los Angeles County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. The CFE works, convenes, advocates, and builds capacity to strengthen the financial health of Los Angeles County residents. Last year, we held a webinar series called COVID Conversations to help local nonprofits, social service providers, and others stay current on COVID-19 related information, resources, and tools to help serve low to moderate income LA County individuals and families during this unprecedented time. Today, we are kicking off the series for the 2021 season, so welcome. Thank you for joining us today as we learn more about resources available to you, the expansion of tax credits, and why it's not too late to file, even though the filing deadline is only 5 days away. I'd like to introduce Anna Johnson, Senior Project Manager for John Burton Advocates for Youth. John Burton Advocates for Youth's mission is to improve the quality of life for youth in California who have been in foster care or homeless by advocating for better laws, training communities to strengthen local practices, and conducting research to inform policy solutions. Anna works on housing and health policy for John Burton. Anna works with young adults and current youth in foster care to ensure their voices influence policies that affect them, providing services, care, attention to youth who live under the daily stress of violence, poverty, and other forms of abuse that can help young people build resiliency, thrive in the short and long terms. As a reminder, please stay on mute. Any questions should be posted on the chat. Anna, I'll turn over it now to you to start the presentation, and let us know when you'd like to advance the slides.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. If you could just let me know who you are in the chat and what your kind of role is. Are you looking for tax help yourself, or do you have specific questions? Anything to introduce yourself in the chat is welcome, so I know who our audience is and get to know you a little bit better. So next slide, please. So today we're going to kind of do a taxes 101, and we'll talk through the expanded federal and state tax credits that can help build your refund, put cash into the pockets of California's transition age youth and parents and young adults, and really all Californians. So there's been some federal and state law changes related to COVID-19 and stimulus and economic recovery, and we're going to talk through those today. And the only way to get that money is by filing your taxes at this point. So next slide, please. John Burton Advocates for Youth focuses on financial support for transition age youth, college students, foster youth, young parents, and homeless youth who might be first-time filers. So we've created a lot of information because the tax kind of language and filing system is a whole new vocabulary. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of information that isn't necessarily intuitive. So people do need help filing their taxes, sometimes at all ages, but specifically first-time filers who are doing this for the first time themselves. And thank you to Paula, who introduced herself in the chat. It's nice to meet you, Paula, and others, please introduce yourselves. Next slide, please. Right now, we're also trying to support people in filing their taxes because it's a way to get money during COVID-19's impact on earnings. So particularly for young adults, they have had higher job loss and reduced hours compared to other working populations. Over 24% have become unemployed or lost work due to the pandemic. Folks who can work at home have increased internet and technology expenses where that might have been done through work. Grocery and PPE expenses have grown for families and individuals, particularly for young people who might have relied on other sources of support where they're now in isolation and not just learning to do their taxes, but learning how to cook and budget and plan on their own, where they used to might have been able to use a student cafeteria or college campus for some of that support. A lot of housing needs have changed. There's been difficulties accessing childcare and additional costs there. And we'll talk about the childcare tax credit and how to recuperate some of those expenses due to COVID-19. Difficulties accessing public benefits and unemployment. So we know nationally that there were 2 stimulus checks that went out in 2020 and a third that's supposed to be going out right now in 2021. But over 8 million people did not receive that initially from the IRS. And the only way to receive those 2 payments from 2020 is by filing your taxes. Folks who are now at home more often have increased utilities and home costs. And we've just talked about those stimulus check barriers that we're trying to help folks overcome. And this can be very difficult. Again, when you're isolated on your own, it's harder to safely enter a public building and ask for support. You kind of have to navigate the phone and online systems yourself. So that's why we're here today. Next slide. So this slide has a lot of information, but I believe everyone here is going to receive the slide deck, which has links to each of these tax credits that we'll talk through. So the first tax credit available to tax filers is the federal earned income tax credit. And the range has increased from $1,500 to $6,660 for people who qualify. That depends on if you're single, filing jointly, or have children, and how many children you have, depends on the size of the credit. The credit for this year is only available to taxpayers 25 to 65 years old, unless you have a child. If you have a child at any age, you can qualify for this credit, the federal earned income tax credit. So young parents do qualify. So if you're 18, 19, 20, you can still get this. For next year, they've changed the law. So federally, 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds who are former or foster youth, or former foster youth, or homeless youth will qualify starting at ages 18 and older. But that's for next year's filing season. So if you have any questions on the federal earned income tax credit, we can talk more about that. The next is the child tax credit. So the standard child tax credit is usually up to $2,000 per child dependent. So if you have 2 children, it's $4,000, right? So just kind of keep adding that up depending on how many children you have. And what the child tax credit is that, you know, if you file your taxes and you have a child, then you can qualify. So for 2021, it could be expanded to $3,000 with the option for monthly payments, actually up to $3,500 total, where they would spread out that payment. So whether it's $3,000 or $3,500 depends on the age of the child. Any child younger than 18, it qualifies for $3,000. 0 to 5 is the $3,500. The link there talks more about the child tax credit payments and how those will work throughout 2021. The adoption tax credit is for anyone who is in the prior tax year 2020 adopted someone. They can be reimbursed for a certain amount of court costs, attorney fees, home studies, and other expenses related to legal adoption of a child. A really common one that people might not be familiar with because of the pandemic is unemployment benefits. Unemployment is taxable. Now, a lot of people think, do I have to pay back unemployment? No, you don't have to pay back unemployment, but it is taxable income, meaning a portion of it is considered when you file your taxes. So you could have a tax return for unemployment. It's called a 1099-G form. And it'll tell you how much money you received from unemployment payments in the tax year. And you'll subtract $10,000 from that because the federal law has changed to disclude $10,000 as taxable. So only the amount above that would go towards your taxable income. And when you enter it into a software or work with a tax filer that can help you with that, You just put in the total amount that you received, but if you had federal withholdings, you'll most likely get some of that money when you do your refund as well. So that's a benefit. If you have questions about unemployment when you file, just let me know. And then finally, the federal stimulus checks. Basically the federal stimulus checks, if you did not get them, there's a question on the tax return this year that says, you know, I received my first stimulus check and you have to enter how much you received. And I received my second and you have to enter how much you received. Or I did not receive any stimulus check in 2020. So you check the boxes that apply to you. And if you didn't get one or both of those, that will populate into your return for this year. And you'll get that money as part of your return. So if you missed it, if you didn't get it, filing taxes is now the only way to get those stimulus payments, and it'll be included in your refund. So we've been helping youth in Santa Clara County, foster youth, file their taxes. Most of them did not get one or both of those stimulus checks, and their average returns have been close to $2,000 to $3,000 because they're getting their regular tax return from their work plus the stimulus checks that they never received. So it's a lot of money, and it's really important that you file. Paula, I see your questions about calculating the EITC. There are some calculators. I don't know, Alejandra, if you want to pull those from online and drop them in the chat, but there are earned income tax credit, calculate my refund links, as well as Cal EITC. So we'll go to the next slide and talk about California specific tax credits. Okay, so for California tax credits and the Golden State stimulus, there's been some updates. So, and these are positive ones. So first of all, this is an online calculator. So Paula, this link here is one way to see if you qualify for the California earned income tax credit and how much you might qualify for. So if you're 18 or older or have a qualifying child or dependent, someone you take care of, and you made less than $30,000 in the tax year, so in 2020, you qualify for the Cal EITC when you file your state tax return. The credit ranges from $243 to $3,027, depending on how you file and if you have children. So if you're single, no children, it's closer to the couple $100. If you have children and you're the head of household, you're kind of going to get more like $1,000. Plus, if you have a child in California who is under age of 6 in 2020, so 0 through all the way through age 5, they'll get the young child tax credit, which is an additional $1,000 in your refund because of the costs that have been borne to new and young parents. So that's another $1,000 if you have a child under the age of 6. The next thing that is specific to California is a renter's credit. It's $60 if you're filing as single and $120 if you're married and sort of filing together. So as long as your income is below $87,000 and you've lived in California and pay rent for 6 months out of the year, you'll get either that $60 or $120 depending on how you're filing. Now, this last item on this slide is the Golden State stimulus, which is new this year as a part of the governor and legislature's pandemic response for Californians. They wanted to make sure that all Californians did receive a California-specific stimulus, and they've started that by to those who earned less than $30,000 receive $600 if you file your taxes. So you have to file in order to get this. They've now changed the budget proposal, so anyone earning $75,000 or less is going to qualify for that $600. And they've actually added, if you have a child in the family, any children, any family with one or more children will get an additional $500 of a California specific credit. So you do have to file your 2020 tax return in order to qualify for the Golden State stimulus. So again, that's $600 for an individual earning $75,000 or less, or $1,100 if you're filing and you have a child. So it'll be another big chunk of money. So that's hundreds or thousands of dollars. Again, you have to file to get those tax credits. Paula, I'm wondering, did we answer your question? So we've got the calculator here, and I think that's what you needed. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just more detail, you know, if you didn't want to go to that calculator slide, but this is the kind of changes in the law, and I'll just review how the law has changed since 2018. So to get the earned income tax credit and the California earned income tax credit, you had to be ages 25 to 65 in California. In 2018, they lowered it to age 18. So that's why transition age youth, young adults can now qualify for that California earned income tax credit. Then in 2019, the young child tax credit was added to give another $1,000 to parents with a child under the age of 6. And then in 2020, tax filers who use an individual taxpayer identification number now qualify for the California earned income tax credit. Now, this is really important for Californians who are undocumented. They pay taxes, they're working, and they don't qualify for many of the federal relief aspects of the pandemic. So, and those federal tax credits, but California is trying to make that more equitable for all Californians by expanding. And so what I talked about, the Golden State stimulus and the California earned income tax credit are now available to all tax filers who are undocumented using an I-10. And if you don't have an I-10, you can get one from the free tax locations or by calling the IRS. And we have a tax prep checklist that kind of walks people through how to do that. So I'll drop that in the chat here for everyone. And next slide, please. Okay, so this is just more about the Cali ITC, which we've covered with, there are flyers if you want to circulate this through your network. There's kind of posters, flyers, all kinds of materials. So next slide, please. And this is just kind of a helpful chart about up to how much cash back you could potentially receive based on the number of children you have by both the state and federal tax credits. So again, if you have no children, it can come out to be a couple of hundreds of dollars, getting close to $1,000. With one child, a few $1,000s, to a few more thousand, and three or more, multiple thousands of dollars that you could qualify for just by filing your taxes to help. And these were intended to help keep families and children out of poverty, which is why they do these tax credits. Next slide. So we're looking at how this can impact someone's total earnings and total income for the year by filing their taxes. So former foster youth at age 21, their average earnings were $8,700. And if you add up the federal earned income tax credit, if they have a child, they would qualify. If they get the Cali ITC and the young child tax credit, plus that Golden State stimulus, and now I should have added the extra $500 onto the slide, but see how we're getting from $8,000 as total income up to $14,000 essentially. So these tax credits have nearly had a 60% increase on someone's income. And the same for the average working undergraduate student. So again, if they have one child, they could qualify and kind of have a 38% increase. And if they have a child, even more, another $500 when they file. So this can really impact someone's total income and expenses in a positive way. But again, you need to overcome any barriers to filing your taxes and any confusion around filing your taxes in order to benefit from these. So we'll talk next about how to help someone understand taxes and get to an appointment. Next. All right, so I'm going to actually have Alexis Berries join me now, and we're going to just talk through what it can be like as a first-time filer, and how to help people, kind of advice for helping people file their taxes with confidence, with support, and to really maximize the money that they can get back. So Alexis, thank you for joining us. Alexis is an advocate with John Burton Advocates for Youth and has supported current and former foster youth and students experiencing homelessness in a number of ways through legislative and policy advocacy and reforms. And today she's going to talk to us about a little bit about tax filing as a young adult and what that is like. So good afternoon, Alexis.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me.
All right. Can you tell the group here what it was like the first time you filed taxes?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I would say for me, the first time filing taxes, it was extremely frustrating. And taxes, my first time filing was foreign. I didn't have a clue like what I was supposed to do. I thought I was seeking out advice from like people who knew what to do, and I received some not so good advice, unfortunately, which caused me to deflect and like have issues with my taxes ongoing. But my first time filing, I didn't even know the difference between like this. There was like a state and a federal, like there was two separate things that we have to do, and they're not the same. I always thought that franchise tax board and the other one were all the same thing, but I found out that later on that it's two different filing sites. So going back to the question, it was frustrating. It was foreign, and just a lot of the things that I had come to learn the first time filing were incorrect.
Yeah, and now we've kind of talked it through some of those kind of that misinformation to kind of give you the full information. And this year we have these expansions of the California Earned Income Tax Credit and the Golden State Stimulus. So tell me a little bit, why are you excited about those expansions?
One, I think it's more opportunity to like kind of get back on track for young people. I think that it's exciting to have those specific resources available to us. I'm most excited that there's identified help with this very complex like thing, that even older adults who are more educated and have more understanding that they struggle with. As I mentioned before, like I didn't have the tools and education to prepare myself, and so if the adults supporting foster youth are able to direct them to these VitaSites tax services and free online services to kind of guide them through, there'll be less of a chance that other foster youth like myself will experience that additional stressor, along with everything else that's going on in our lives. So I think I'm just most excited about that specific direction and VitaSites and the professionals that are supporting young people.
Great. And with the pandemic, a lot of pandemic response has focused on stimulus checks being sent by the IRS, which requires the IRS to know who we all are and to have our addresses and to have our bank account information.
Yeah.
And so for people who've never filed, there's been a lot of barriers. So did you receive your stimulus checks in 2020, or how did you end up getting those?
Sure. I mean, speaking of barriers, so the biggest barrier was being in foster care. I think that a lot of us know that placement isn't always stable, and we move around a lot. And so with that being said, I know that they sent it out, like they sent stimulus checks out by mail, but in my case and in many others, I wasn't able to receive the stimulus check because I didn't have the correct address on file. They didn't have the correct information to get me my check originally. So originally I did not receive the stimulus check. And going back to what you noted in your presentation, after filing my 2020s, I was able to receive the stimulus towards that. So I was able to get it. Unfortunately, it wasn't in like the timely manner that everyone else got it, and like had to wait a really long time because you have to wait for your W-2s and all that information. from your employers just to file, to get the correct address on file. So that was a barrier for me, just the address, having an address change, and them not having the correct place to send it to me.
Right. And so now you filed your 2020 tax return and you finally received the stimulus through that process. So good on you for getting it together and getting your stimulus. And hopefully you'll get your third stimulus check because now the IRS does have your correct address. So hopefully you'll see that third stimulus check come through as they continue to administer those.
Yeah, that'll be really exciting. I think that it's definitely going to be something that youth are going to, need, and they're going to benefit from it. So that's exciting to hear that there's a third one coming through.
All right. So for people on the webinar today who haven't yet filed or who are helping other people file their taxes or get to a free appointment, what would you like these first-time filers to know or to hear from you? What advice can you give them?
So I would say the most important thing that I would suggest is that it's the education piece, like understanding that taxes are an extremely important part of your life. And so when everything else is going wrong in life and sucking, you don't want to fall victim of tax debt. You don't want to fall victim of like the IRS and like having to owe and not filing correctly. So get your taxes done by an expert. It's very important to have it done by an expert and done correctly, like someone who knows what they're doing. Taxes don't really need to be scary. It doesn't have to be unknown. I think the more that we talk about it and normalize it and like have these open discussions and forum with young people, the better they are, even before having a job, just it should be part of curriculum, like education, because we all have to pay it. So I think that we can learn, the skills necessary, but it does take support, especially for first-time filing. So like, being accessible to young people to even guide them to the right person to get their taxes done would be
right. A lot of people will kind of be afraid to do it themselves, and then they'll go to a paid service, and paid services can charge up to $300, and then that's half of your tax credit.
Yeah, that's like and I've been there, and I know plenty of other young adults who have been there as well. So it's kind of like it becomes kind of a nuisance. Like, why even file if I'm not giving anything back? Like, you're just gonna take the tax credit, or the agency is gonna take it all away anyway. So having the information that you can get it done for free and by somebody who knows, I think that's like the key.
Great. So final question, what do you think adult supporters of youth, first-time filers, and college students can do to help support them file their taxes on time this tax season?
Like I said already, I think that don't give advice, uneducated advice. Direct the young people to tax experts for a better outcome, i.e. the VITA sites. Use the tools and resources that you learn from here, and help young people understand what a deduction is and a credit and the various languages around that information, and then help them get signed up for their free appointment. And if young people are supported in doing it right the first time, it will build a lifelong habit and bring more money into their pockets for youth who really need it. So creating that good habit.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alexis. And we'll go on to the next slide and actually share that information about how to help people find their way to a free tax service or appointment, or have help maximizing their credits and refunds and getting their return and getting their money back. So thank you, Alexis. The first resources I want to point out here are that there are all county information notices that do go out to county welfare directors, tribal nations, CalFresh or refugee program coordinators to help spread the word. Within each of these document links, there's more information and background on everything that we've shared, but this can be just one really formal way. So next slide. We've also created this guide that talks generally about the California Earned Income Tax Credit, how to determine if you need to file taxes and what the tax filing threshold is at $12,000 or more as a single adult. And it's more if you have children. So take a look at that. If you're like, do I have to absolutely file? How do I know? It talks about how to prepare the documents and personal information to file your taxes, where to go to file your taxes using free online links where you do it yourself, free online virtual appointments, or in-person COVID-safe appointments, and then getting your refund. And in the appendix of this guide, there's a lot of links to information, fact sheets, services that can help walk you through all of these questions you might have. Next slide. If you're just trying to spread the word, we do have some social media toolkits, posters, brochures, and the Franchise Tax Board and CaliITCforme.org and Golden State Opportunity on those websites that are linked here. They have a lot of information around how to get the word out. So use those to spread the word. And next slide. This tax prep checklist walks through, what do you do? Do you have everything you need to file? So do you have a government ID? Do you have a permanent address? Do you have a social security number or ITIN? If the answer is no, it tells you how to get one of those things or what you can do instead so that you can still get your money and file your taxes. So instead of having these barriers, how do you kind of overcome them? It also talks through the different forms and what you need in there. So this is has been developed with young adults and former foster youth to really explain the process in a way that is understandable and language friendly. Next slide. The tax season started February 12th and originally was April 15th. The IRS extended the deadline to next week, May 17th. But if you don't owe taxes, you can file anytime. If you do, you request an extension. So I can put the way to request an extension in the chat here. So if you're still needing documents or don't have all your information and you can't file between now and May 17th, request an extension and then continue to file and get everything together between now and October 15th. So I will put that extension link in the agenda here or in the chat here for how to request an extension if you do need more time. Okay, next slide. So this link up here is the IRS free tax service locator tool. You can put in your zip code and choose anywhere between 50 miles away. A lot of sites, because of COVID, are doing virtual or drop-off appointments for COVID safety, where you get all your documents together, you can go and drop them off. Someone prepares your return for you and you go and pick it up. Or you can get an in-person appointment with a mask or PPE, or you can do it virtually like this on a Zoom video. Next slide. So find your appointment. This is one way to find a local appointment. If you're working with young adults, like Alexis suggested, like building in those educational pieces through the independent living plan, helping with credit history checks. Youth are sometimes, youth who have been in the system have their data compromised, unfortunately, more frequently and might be victims of tax identity theft or fraud. So you want to do those credit history checks more regularly. There's team meetings and ILP programs where that education can be delivered. Next slide. If you didn't file your taxes from the previous years, you can also get the California and that money, those refunds. So if you're like, whoa, I didn't know about this money that was available to me, I didn't file, you can go ahead and do that now. Those tax sites will help you with previous years, and you can you do the same thing. You get the same documents together. and for each tax year, and you can go back up to 3 years. So you can still file 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, all of those 4 total tax years this year. So 3 prior years. Next slide. So this link right here, I'm going to put into the chat. This is a really helpful website. There's one in English and one in Spanish, and it's a free way to get your taxes done with a tax expert right now before the May 17th deadline. So what you'll do is you click on the link and you answer some questions about how, about, do you need your 2020 or prior years tax returns? Do you have children? And you kind of answer the questions, and then they'll have you upload your tax documents, and a service provider, a free tax preparer will prepare your taxes and give you a call back to finalize it. And they'll tell you who your local provider is of free tax help. So using these links, I've had a lot of success for current or former foster youth needing an appointment, wanting that assistance, and been able to help walk them through the answers to the questions. And you yourself could use these tools. It's statewide, so feel free to use that link to get a free tax service. Next slide. All right, so with that, we can do any remaining questions and answers. So one of the questions was, is there a federal EITC calculator? So I just put that into the chat. Are there any other questions? All right, Alejandra or Kevin or Sakina, if there's any questions that you're seeing that I can answer.
Hi, Anna. If you file taxes after the 17th deadline, what happens with the monthly payments you're supposed to receive from the expanded child tax credit?
Can you say that again? If you're filing after the deadline?
After the deadline, does that impact you getting the monthly payments from the expanded child tax credit, those, I think, $600?
You'll still get the amount. So how it works is you get a flat amount at the end of the tax season when you file, or you can get that paid over monthly. So whenever you file, that's when you would then qualify for the monthly payments. And now why people like the idea of monthly is that it's easier to budget your child's expenses on a monthly basis when bills and things are due. So having it at the end of the year, kind of all at once, isn't as helpful to some people as it could be as a monthly check. So that's kind of how they're hoping to roll that out. As you've seen with stimulus and other types of rollout, there's been some implementation issues. So this is the first time that they're doing it. So I'm sure that they're, we'll kind of learn from this year how that goes. But as soon as you file, if you request an extension, then you'll start to qualify for that option. So I do have some other questions here. So if you're using the software, will it automatically have you qualify based on information submitted? So one really good thing to do is take that tax prep checklist. The software on the free sites that are linked, and in the free site, the getyourrefund.org in English or Spanish, should help you benefit from all of the credits. Most of them ask upfront questions like, did you get your stimulus checks? Yes or no. Are you a renter? Yes or no. Do you have children? And you put that information in. You will need your children's social security numbers or ID numbers to benefit from those. So when you put that information into the system, most of the calculations happen in the software itself. You don't have to do that math. There are a few questions, like if you're a student or if you're self-employed, it can be a little bit of math that you do and enter it into the correct box in the software. And I'll give you 2 examples. So if you're at a college or university or trade school and you have a scholarship and tuition expenses, what you have to do before putting it into the software is subtract all of your expenses plus any receipts for materials and books from the scholarship amount when you go to enter into the American Opportunity Tax Credit for students. So you do have to do a little bit of math and put that into the software. If you're self-employed and you have business expenses like your business cards, your phone, internet, your home office expenses, you do have to add that all up for the year by category, and you put that into the software. You're the only one that knows how much money you paid. Similarly, a third example is the child care tax credit. If you paid for child care and earned $100,000 or less, you can have some of those expenses paid back to you if that child care helped you go to work or school. So you have to have that receipt, have the person who provided the child care, and you enter that person's information and either their tax ID number or social security number and how much you paid them over the year. You'll put that number in, and then the software calculates how much they're going to give you in your return based on how much money you've earned, how much other deductions you've already qualified for, and then how many credits. So there's a few definitions that I think can more fully answer your question. Some of these tax items are deductions, meaning we all owe a certain amount of taxes, and certain items will subtract down from that a deduction. And then other credits are you get that back. So it starts to come back into your wallet. So all of those are examples of how some of the work you do and then you put it into the software, but all of the other math and calculations, the software or these online free programs do it for you. I hope that answers your question. I think Jaime. So, and there's another question, do we get access to these slides? So I don't know, Alex, if you want to answer that one.
I did. Everybody will get the slides emailed to them.
Great. Are there any other questions that we can answer?
We have another question, Anna. How do the monthly advances from the child tax credit affect next year's refund?
Okay, so how would they affect next year's refunds? Well, you can only get it once. So it's sort of like how the stimulus is treated in 2020. If you got the stimulus check and you go to file your taxes, you're checking the box that says, I filed. So you don't get it in the refund because you already got it. But if you didn't get it, you say, I didn't get it, and then you get it with your final refund. So with the IRS rules that they're updating in the software, it will be, I imagine it'll be something like that, where they'll have you confirm how much you received on a monthly basis and put it in, and whatever's left over beyond that, or, you know, if you didn't get the full amount, then you'll get the remainder of what you hadn't been paid yet, or you'll get the full amount if you didn't receive monthly payments.
Okay, and I have one more question. Can you talk about how to best serve our homeless community, specifically young adults who qualify but are mobile?
Yes, so there are some options for if you don't have a permanent address. So number one is make sure that they have a bank account, because then they can do their refund using direct deposit rather than a paper check. So that's one option, is using direct deposit, a bank account. Or if they don't have a bank account, you can help them with get a debit card. That prepaid debit card can be used for the IRS or the Franchise Tax Board to pay the return onto that debit card as a secondary option. The third option is to use a shelter, clinic, or trusted address that the youth or homeless person could go and pick up the paper check from their refund when it arrives. So the best way for someone who is mobile or does not have a permanent address is to use like their actual direct deposit account, because then no matter where they are, they can access their funds. And I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thank you, Anna. One last opportunity to ask a question on the chat. Please make sure that you are either sending it to Anna, who's the presenter, or all attendees. And somebody asked a question. Can you please provide the link where I can review the presentation in the future? The presentation will be on the DCBA website. That's dcba.lacounty.gov. It will be posted on our site, so you can review it whenever you need to. Okay, Anna, did you get any other questions?
No, seeing no other questions, this is my email on the slide here. If you are trying to access any of the resources and having a difficult time, feel free to email me and get support, so that you have until May 17th to file by the deadline and get your refund. There is support available to you using those resources. And then again, if you need an extension or you need more time, that's okay. I put the extension link in here. You can request that and take more time to get your details together so you can maximize your refund. And if you don't owe, or if you didn't do prior years, you can still do that. You can still file prior years. So I just encourage you to take the time, use the checklist to get your documents together, and get support. So that's my email. Do not hesitate to use it with any questions, and we'll just make sure you get your return this year. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Anna and Alexis. That was very insightful. I'm glad to see there was a number of resources available. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. All the participants will receive an email copy of the PowerPoint presentation. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to actually see the presentation, you can go to our website, dcba.lacounty.gov. Also, please don't forget to register for our next webinar from CalSavers. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much.